Welcome to our fun little study group for PP 5361 Theory and Management of Public Service Organizations. These are the readings from the required text, Managing Human Behavior in Public and Nonprofit Organizations, Chapter 9.
It is genuinely good to be back with you, and today we are tackling a beast of a topic, really.
No, absolutely.
It's the one skill that every single person, just assumes they're good at, but the data and probably the wreckage of our own personal and professional relationships suggest otherwise.
Yeah.
We are talking about communication.
Exactly. It's the thing we do all day, every single day, yet somehow we can still be so terrible at it.
It's true.
And to kick things off, I want to share a little joke that was actually right there in the reading. It's labeled as an Old English joke, which I think adds a nice layer of dusty sophistication to it.
Okay.
And I think it perfectly sets the stage for the chaos we are about to dive into.
I love this one. Let's hear it.
Okay, so picture the scene. Three men are riding on a bus in London. It's loud, the engine is rattling, typical city noise. The bus pulls up to a stop, and the first man looks out the window, looking totally confused, and asks, "Is this Wembley?"
Right.
The second man shakes his head, looks at him, and says, "No, this is Thursday."
Okay.
And the third man just smiles, nods enthusiastically, and says, "So am I. Let's have a drink."
It is an absolute classic, and it's so perfect for this topic.
It's hilarious, but also, the more I thought about it, it's a little tragic, right? Because nobody has a single clue what is actually going on.
Right. And while it plays as a joke there, it is actually a perfect, if not slightly terrifying, illustration of the fundamental disconnect between what is sent and what is received.
Yeah.
You have three people operating in completely different realities, using, similar phonetic sounds, but decoding them into totally unrelated meanings.
Yeah.
Wembley, Wednesday, Thursday.
And when that happens on a bus, it's just a funny story for the pub. But when it happens in a public service organization, when you're dealing with budgets or policy or, personnel, the stakes are way, way higher.
Absolutely. The text opens with this really heavy case study that I think we need to unpack. It's the story of Mary Lou Cooper and John Carter. And this isn't just a funny mix-up. This is a career-ending disaster.
Yeah, this one, it hurt to read because it was so avoidable. So let's set the scene for everyone listening. Mary Lou is the boss of an internal audit agency.
Okay.
She notices John, who is one of her star employees, looks totally burned out. He's fatigued, he's dragging. So being a kind, empathetic human being, she suggests he take some time off.
A reasonable, supportive gesture. In her mind, she's being the benevolent leader looking out for her team's well-being, a good manager.
You would think, but John is already on edge because of a family illness. He's feeling insecure about his performance because his head just hasn't been in the game.
Right, he's already in a negative headspace.
So when Mary Lou says, take some time off, his brain decodes that as, get out of the way because you're failing. He hears it as a threat.
And here is the tragedy of the communication gap. Instead of resting, John enters panic mode. He works himself to the bone, risking his health, trying to prove he shouldn't be fired.
But it doesn't stop there. This is where we see the ripple effect, the organizational chaos.
Right, because organizations are basically just high school cafeterias with better furniture.
That's a perfect way to put it. So, enter Steve and Phil. They are best friends in the office. They hear rumors about a new management job opening up.
Okay, so now there's competition in the air.
Exactly. Steve mentions a small mistake Phil made on a project. Just a casual comment in the lunchroom, probably didn't think twice about it.
But due to the noise in the system, the gossip, the rumors, Phil hears about this comment secondhand.
And what does he hear?
He interprets it not as a casual remark, but as negative campaigning by his best friend to steal the promotion.
Oh, no.
He thinks Steve is sabotaging him.
So Phil stops talking to Steve. They become enemies, just like that. Then they see John working like a maniac.
Because remember, John thinks he's about to be fired.
Right, but Steve and Phil don't know that. They assume John is working hard because he wants the promotion, so now they both start bad-mouthing John.
And suddenly you have an organization in total chaos. Friendships are ruined, trust is completely eroded, and the actual work of the agency is pushed to the back burner.
All because of a series of misinterpretations that started with Mary Lou trying to be nice.
It's like a Shakespearean tragedy in a cubicle. It really is. And it brings us to the core thesis of this deep dive.
Which isn't.
We often think of communication as just swapping data. I send a file, you receive a file. But the text argues that communication is much more than that. It is the force that actually creates and sustains the organization itself.
So if the communication breaks.
If the communication breaks, the organization doesn't just function poorly. In a very real sense, it ceases to function as a cohesive entity.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of why this breaks down so often. We've all seen that diagram in textbooks, right? The sender box, an arrow, and the receiver box.
The classic transmission model. Sender encodes, sends a message through a channel, receiver decodes, and then, gives feedback. It looks so neat and tidy on paper.
But the text basically says, throw that out. Or at least acknowledge that it's wildly insufficient.
It is. It's too mechanical. It completely misses the messiness of being human. The text highlights two massive disruptors that simple model misses: context and noise.
Let's talk about context first. This is the environment, right? The where and when.
Yes, both physical and psychological. If you are trying to give complex feedback to an employee during a loud fundraising event, the physical context is going to degrade the message. That's obvious.
Sure.
But the psychological context is even stickier. If that employee is stressed about a sick parent like John Carter was, that context filters everything you say.
It's like they're wearing invisible earmuffs that only let certain interpretations through.
A perfect analogy. And then there's noise.
Right.
And the reading points out this isn't just, jackhammers outside the window. It's social noise.
What exactly is social noise?
Think of the game telephone. Social noise is how a message distorts as it passes through the social fabric of an organization. By the time a message moves from the director to the deputy to the manager to the associate,
It's been stripped of all nuance.
and recolored by everyone's individual biases and agendas. What started as, we should explore this possibility, becomes, this is the new mandatory policy.
There was a great case study in the text about Dean Ann. This one really resonated with me regarding how hard it is to just send a message and hope for the best.
Oh, Dean Ann is in such a tough spot. She runs a school of public affairs. She wants to raise endowment funds, but to get outside donors.
She needs the faculty to donate first.
Right, to show skin in the game.
Yeah.
To show that the people on the inside believe in the mission.
Which sounds logical on paper, but she's terrified to ask.
And why? Because she knows the faculty didn't get good raises this year. So she's caught.
So she has an encoding problem. How does she even say this? If she sends a memo, which is a lean communication channel, she can't gauge their reaction. It could be a disaster.
But if she holds a meeting, it might just turn into a massive gripe session about salaries.
And the text points out this interpretation gap. Even if she writes the most perfect, eloquent memo in the world, the faculty are all looking at it through their own unique lenses.
Exactly. One professor, maybe one who's financially secure, might read it and think, oh, this is a strategic move to secure our school's future. I'm in.
But another professor who is struggling to pay bills because of those low raises reads the exact same words and thinks,
This is cruel, ruthless arm twisting. Same words, different worlds.
precisely. And that leads us to that famous optical illusion mentioned in the chapter.
Oh, the lady in the picture.
Yes, the drawing that can look like a stylish young woman looking away,
Or an old woman with a scarf, depending on how your brain organizes the lines.
I always see the old woman first, by the way. I have to really squint to find the young one.
And I usually see the young woman. But the aha moment here, the key insight, is that both figures are present on the page simultaneously. Nothing changes in the drawing itself.
What changes is us.
What changes is the lens you bring to it. Your accumulated attitudes, your beliefs, your past experiences.
So the takeaway is that we aren't just walkie-talkies transmitting objective data back and forth. We are active creators of meaning.
We create and decipher meaning based on our own reality. And that is why misunderstandings are the default, not the exception.
Speaking of misunderstandings, the text had a section on ambiguity that it blew my mind. Specifically, the story about Ronald Reagan and George Shultz.
This is such a great historical example of high-stakes ambiguity. So President Reagan calls George Shultz.
Yeah.
Reagan wants Shultz to join his cabinet as Secretary of State.
Which is the job Shultz actually wanted.
Exactly. But Reagan, trying to be polite or perhaps just a little casual, says something like, I'd be interested in having you join my cabinet. He doesn't specify the role.
And Shultz had heard all these rumors that he was being considered for Treasury, which was a job he did not want.
So he assumes Reagan means Treasury.
So he turns the president down. He says no to the job he desperately wanted because the message was totally ambiguous.
The sender meant one thing, the receiver heard another, and history almost took a completely different turn. All because of one vague sentence.
That is it's incredible. And that's unintentional ambiguity. But the text also quotes William White, who says some ambiguity is actually on purpose.
Oh, absolutely. This is the survival instinct of the modern bureaucrat.
The alibi mechanism.
Exactly. White suggests that people use vague language intentionally. If a project succeeds, you can step forward and claim the credit because your memo was vague enough to sound supportive of the idea.
See, I was on board from the beginning.
But if it fails, you can point to the very same memo and say, see, I warned you about the potential complexities and downside.
That is devious, and yet I recognize it instantly. I've seen it happen.
It creates safety for the individual, but it kills clarity for the organization.
Then there's the issue of frame of reference. The text used the Casual Friday example, which I thought was really clear. Someone shows up on Casual Friday in a full suit and tie.
Right. Now, if your frame of reference is organizational conformity, you look at that person and your brain immediately starts creating a story.
You think they're protesting the new policy, they're being difficult on purpose. What's their problem?
But the person in the suit, their frame of reference is completely different. They're just thinking, I'm going to the opera after work and I don't have time to change.
We attribute motive where there is only circumstance.
We do it all the time. And this gets even messier when you add power dynamics into the mix.
Oh, yeah.
The text references Cynthia Stoll's 4 levels of communication. This was fascinating because it breaks down the filtering process of talking to a boss.
I think everyone listening will recognize this immediately.
It is a brilliant breakdown. Level 1 is what you want to say. The raw, unfiltered truth. Boss, this plan is terrible and you don't know what you're talking about.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Silently.
Level 2 is what you decide to say. You filter it through, your need to keep your job. There might be some flaws in this approach that we should consider.
Much safer.
Level 3 is what actually comes out of your mouth. It gets filtered again by nerves or the specific context of the meeting. That's an interesting possibility.
And the most important level, level 4, is what the boss hears.
Right. And what do they hear? Maybe they called it interesting, they support me. But they might also hear, they weren't very enthusiastic. I'll remember that at bonus time. They don't really support me.
It's terrifying. The truth has completely evaporated by level 4. It's gone.
And that is why executives so often live in a bubble. They aren't getting the truth. They're getting the heavily filtered answers that people think they want to hear.
Okay, so we've established that communication is a minefield. It's full of noise, lenses, ambiguity, and power dynamics. Let's talk about the toolkit. How do we actually fix this?
Right.
The text spends a lot of time on something called supportive communication.
This is crucial. The absolute enemy of communication is defensiveness. As soon as someone feels attacked, their ears close. Their brain just stops processing information and starts building a defense.
I know that feeling. It's like a wall goes up.
The goal of supportive communication is to deliver the message, even a tough message, without triggering that brace for impact reflex.
So let's run through the attributes listed in the chapter. The first one is problem-oriented, not person-oriented.
This is the difference between saying, you are lazy, which is an attack on the person's unchangeable character,
Right.
and saying, let's work on improving the workflow because deadlines are being missed. You focus on the behavior or the process, which is changeable.
The next one is descriptive, not evaluative. This feels related.
It is, but it's a specific technique. It's hard because we love to judge. So instead of saying, you really messed up this time, which is pure evaluation.
You use the 3 steps.
Exactly. Step 1, describe the event objectively. The report was late. Just a fact. Step 2, describe your reaction. I am concerned about our credibility with the client. And step 3, suggest a collaborative solution.
So it's just facts and consequences, not personal judgments.
Right. It lowers the emotional temperature of the conversation immediately.
Okay, attribute number 3, specific versus general.
This one is simple but powerful. Avoid global general words like always, never, or sloppy.
Like, you're always late.
Instead, say you were late 3 times this month, or there were 5 grammatical errors on page 2. That is specific and actionable. Your sloppy is just an insult with no solution attached.
This next one is interesting. Owned versus disowned. What does that mean?
This is about leadership courage. It's about taking responsibility for your decisions. If you have to deny a request, say, I've decided to deny the application, not they have decided, or, well, management has decided.
Oh, passing the buck.
Right. When you disown the message, you create distance between you and the other person. It completely destroys trust. If you own it, even if the news is bad, you maintain respect.
And the last big one, validating versus demeaning.
This is about avoiding one-upmanship or just being rigid. If someone brings you a concern, you don't say, "You think that's bad, let me tell you about my horrible day." That's demeaning.
It dismisses their feelings.
Completely. Validating means acknowledging their value and their perspective, even if you disagree with their point. It's saying, "I can see why you feel that way," or "I understand your position, even if mine is different."
So that's the speaking side, but the text throws a pretty wild statistic at us regarding the listening side. It says managers spend about 60% of their time receiving messages.
60%.
Yet listening is the neglected skill.
We train people to speak. We give classes on public speaking. We rarely, if ever, train people to listen. And biology is actually working against us here.
You're talking about the thinking-speaking differential.
Right. So the average human speaks at about, say, 150 words per minute. But the human brain can process or think at about 500 words per minute.
So my brain is literally racing 3 times faster than your mouth is moving.
Exactly. And that surplus brain power is dangerous. While the other person is talking, your brain uses that spare capacity to daydream, to judge what they're saying, or, and this is the most common one, to rehearse your response.
I am 100% guilty of rehearsing. I'm just sitting there waiting for you to take a breath so I can jump in and say my brilliant thing.
Which means you aren't listening, you're just waiting to talk. The strategy is to use that extra brain power to actively reflect on what is being said. Look for themes. Summarize their points in your own head. Engage with their ideas. Don't just wait for them to finish.
The text mentions Carl Rogers here, suggesting we need to suspend judgment.
Rogers argues that our natural immediate urge is to approve or disapprove of what we hear. It's a gut reaction. But to really listen, you have to consciously suppress that evaluation until you fully understand the frame of reference of the other speaker. Listen with empathy first, evaluate second.
And we have to fight off distractions. The text used a very specific and very funny example, the mustard distraction.
Yes. If you are talking to someone and they have a big glob of mustard on their coat, it is almost impossible to focus on their words.
It's true. It's all you can see. It becomes a glowing beacon of mustard.
But mustard is a metaphor for any distraction. An accent you aren't used to, a noise in the hallway, your phone buzzing in your pocket. Active listening is the discipline of forcing your brain to ignore the mustard and find the meaning.
And one of the best techniques mentioned for this is simply rephrasing.
It's the ultimate check. Before you reply, you say, "So what I understand you to be saying is," or, "Let me make sure I've got this right." It does two things.
What are they?
First, it validates the speaker. It shows you were actually listening. Second, it corrects any errors in your understanding before they spiral into a Mary Lou Cooper situation.
Now, we can't talk about communication without talking about the stuff that isn't words. Nonverbal communication.
Body language, kinesics. The text makes it absolutely clear. If your words say, "Good job," but your voice is sarcastic and you're frowning and your arms are crossed.
The receiver believes the frown, not the words.
Every single time. Nonverbal cues always override verbal ones.
And this gets really, really tricky when we cross cultures. The text calls these cultural minefields.
And it is a minefield. Take a simple gesture. In the U.S., if you hold up 2 fingers in a V, it means victory or peace.
Right, the peace sign.
But in England or Australia, if your palm is facing inward when you make that sign, that same gesture is a serious obscenity. It basically means up yours.
Wow. Imagine the diplomatic incidents caused by that one little mistake.
Eye contact is another huge one. In the West, we tell children, "Look at me when I'm talking to you." We associate direct eye contact with honesty and confidence.
Sure.
But in many Asian cultures, maintaining direct, prolonged eye contact with a superior is seen as aggressive or deeply disrespectful.
So a Western manager might think an Asian employee is being shifty or dishonest.
While the employee is actually trying to show the utmost respect by averting their gaze, it's a total misfire.
And then there is proxemics, the use of space. We have these invisible bubbles around us.
Right, and the size of that bubble changes dramatically from culture to culture.
The text described a dance between a Saudi and a German that was just hilarious to visualize.
It is a classic example. Cultures in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, often have a much smaller, intimate zone. They stand very close to talk. It's normal.
Okay.
Northern Europeans, like Germans, tend to have a much larger personal bubble. So in a conversation, the Saudi steps forward to get into their comfortable talking distance.
And the German instinctively steps back to regain their comfortable space.
And they end up waltzing across the entire room without either one realizing why.
We also need to touch on Edward Hall's concept of high versus low context cultures. This explains so much about international business and diplomacy.
It really does. In low-context cultures, think the U.S., Germany, Scandinavia, the meaning is in the explicit code. It's in the words. We have a saying, say what you mean.
Direct. Literal. The contract is everything.
But in high-context cultures, like in Asia, the Middle East, Latin America, most of the information is in the context, the relationship, the setting. It's nonverbal.
It's unspoken.
Right. People expect you to understand the unspoken. If you have to spell everything out explicitly, it's considered insulting or clumsy.
Then there's time. Monochronic versus polychronic.
Monochronic cultures, again like the U.S. and Germany, view time as a line. It's linear. We do one thing at a time. Punctuality is a virtue. Time is money.
And polychronic.
Polychronic cultures view time as more fluid, more circular. Relationships are more important than schedules.
Yep.
So if I'm late to your meeting because I was helping my brother with a problem, that's seen as a perfectly good reason. To a monochronic manager, that's just unprofessional.
Moving from culture to technology, the text discusses media richness. This is about matching the tool to the task.
Right. This comes from the work of Richard Daft and Robert Langle. They classify different communication media on a continuum from rich to lean.
What makes something rich?
A rich medium, like face-to-face conversation, allows for visuals, tone of voice, and immediate feedback. A lean medium, like a flyer or a formal memo, is just words on a page. There's no feedback loop.
So the rule of thumb is match the richness of the medium to the ambiguity of the message.
Exactly. If you are reminding staff about a meeting time, that is completely unambiguous. Use a lean medium, send an email. Do not call a whole meeting just to schedule another meeting.
We've all been in that meeting. But if you are settling a dispute between two angry employees...
That is highly ambiguous and emotional. You need the richest medium you can get face-to-face. Do not, under any circumstances, try to resolve a serious conflict via email. It never, ever works.
The text also warns that technology can reduce trust because it removes those shared human experiences. It references O'Connell's hypotheses that technology imposes a kind of linear thinking and can make work feel impersonal and machine-driven.
We lose the water cooler moments. We lose the casual chats in the hallway where trust and rapport are actually built. If we only interact transactionally through screens, we don't build the emotional bank account needed to weather crises.
Now, I want to hit a few specialized forms of communication mentioned in the chapter. First, coaching versus counseling. I didn't realize there was such a strict and important line here.
It's a vital, legal, and ethical line for managers to understand. Coaching is strictly about work performance. You need to improve your spreadsheet skills, or let's work on your presentation style.
And counseling.
Counseling is for personal problems that are affecting work, and the text is very clear. A supervisor generally should not discuss personal lives unless it directly affects performance.
The Club Tango example was great for this.
Perfect example. You don't say, hey, I heard you were out dancing last night. That's crossing a line. You say, you left work early claiming you had back pain, but you were seen dancing at Club Tango.
So you focus on the performance impact.
You focus on the discrepancy and the impact on the job. You don't play therapist. You state the work-related problem, and, if necessary, you refer them to professional help through HR.
Then there are meetings. Oh, man. The Belinda example?
Poor Belinda. Her meeting was a disaster. It starts late, the agenda drifts, people are on their phones, chatting about the lottery.
It's the meeting from hell that we've all sat through.
But it's fixable. The text lays out a rigorous fix. Distribute the agenda in advance so people can prepare. Start exactly on time, waiting for latecomers. Just punishes the punctual people and rewards bad behavior.
And you have to control the side talk.
Absolutely. And most importantly, you end with a clear summary of action items. Who was doing what and by when. A meeting without clear action items is just a very expensive coffee break.
And finally, a quick one on writing. The 6 C's.
Clarity, courtesy, conciseness, confidence, correctness, and a conversational tone.
I like the conciseness tip from the text. Say, pizza, not food. Be specific.
Specificity beats generality every single time. It saves the reader precious brain cycles. Don't make them work to understand you.
We're in the home stretch here, but this is a big topic. we have to talk about the changing workforce, the hourglass economy.
This is the demographic reality in so many organizations.
Yeah.
We have a lot of baby boomers at the top, a massive group of millennials at the bottom.
And a very small generation, Gen X, pinched in the middle, trying to hold it all together.
And these different generations just do not communicate the same way. Their expectations are completely different.
How so?
Well, traditionalists, the generation before the boomers, often believe no news is good news. If the boss isn't yelling at me, I must be doing fine. Boomers often live to work. They're competitive. They want to win. They expect you to pay your dues.
And then come the millennials.
And they want instant, constant feedback.
Yeah.
They don't see a career as a single ladder in one company. They see parallel careers, side hustles, and crucially, they demand a voice in decision-making immediately. They don't want to wait 20 years to be heard.
The text notes that this causes a lot of friction. Older workers dismiss younger ones as entitled and impatient.
And younger workers dismiss older ones as dinosaurs who are out of touch. And that's where a good manager has to be the translator between these different cultural norms.
The final piece of this whole puzzle is implicit bias. The text calls it the invisible barrier.
This brings us right back to the lenses we discussed at the beginning. Bias isn't always a conscious, malicious hatred. It's often an automatic, unconscious association our brains make.
The cupping story was a really powerful and, frankly, scary example of this failure.
It was. Social workers in the U.S. saw these circular red marks on the backs of Vietnamese children, and they immediately assumed physical abuse. They were ready to remove the children from their homes.
But it wasn't abuse.
It was cupping, a traditional and harmless cold remedy common in their culture. It wasn't abuse, it was care. But the lack of cultural competence, the implicit bias that unexplained red marks on a child mean abuse, almost destroyed families.
That really drives home the stakes of miscommunication.
It does. Communication isn't just about organizational efficiency. In public service, it's about justice. It's about people's lives.
So to recap, we've covered the mechanical model and why it fails. We've looked at all the psychological barriers, the optical illusions of perception. We've gone through the toolkit of supportive communication and active listening, and we've navigated the minefields of culture, technology, and generational differences.
We have covered a lot of ground. It's a huge topic.
It makes me think about that old English joke again from the start. Is this Wembley? No, this is Thursday. So am I. If we don't actively apply these tools, we are all just those guys on the bus.
Just talking past each other in our own little worlds.
So here is the final thought to chew on. The text suggests that communication doesn't just happen in an organization. The text says communication is the organization.
Well, it's the circulatory system. It's the nervous system. It's everything.
So if that's true, if we actually change how we talk, if we start using I statements, if we start validating instead of demeaning, if we really truly listen to the social noise, do we actually change the structural reality of where we work? Does the organization physically change because the words changed?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it? And I believe the answer is yes. You don't build a better, more trusting organization and then teach people how to talk to each other. You teach people how to talk to each other, and that process builds the better organization. The communication comes first.
I love that. Well, thank you to our study group for joining this deep dive into Chapter 9. Go out there and listen to the mustard. Or, wait, ignore the mustard. Listen to the person.
Ignore the mustard. Definitely listen to the person.
See you next time.